Hello, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dragana Kojičić, lecturer, who is going to explain about the earthen architecture in North Serbia, the typologies, the techniques, the variants of these techniques, and the activities she is developing as a earthen architecture expert and researcher in her country to sensitize the people towards this type of architecture. Have fun.
Hello, zdravo. My name is Dragana Kojičić. I'm an architect from Serbia. I'm specialized in earth architecture from France, from Crater. And since 2010, I've been working on promotion of our beautiful earthen heritage. I'm also a PhD student of scene architecture, technique and design in Serbia in Novi Sad, where I'm actually trying to use earth as a tool to create not only spaces, but to create events and to work with the communities. Today, I'm going to talk about earthen architecture of mainly northern Serbia. I would just show first where Serbia is situated in Europe. So we belong to Southeastern Europe. We are in the Balkans. Before it was Yugoslavia, then Serbia and Montenegro, and today we are only Serbia. It's a very small country, but it has very diverse geography and also architecture. So rivers Danube and Sava split the country in two parts. In the northern part called Vojvodina, and it's mainly a big plain, Pannonian Basin, and then we have south of Danube and Sava rivers. We have different topography. So we have hilly Šumadija, and then going more to the south, we have bigger mountains. So also much more forest is in the south and also the west of the country. And types of villages were different. So in northern part, they were very dense, and then going towards south, they are more and more dispersed. Talking about materials, there was much more wood in southwest Serbia, so typical house was wooden house, and then with some earthen elements. And then in the north, for example, we have only or mainly earth, and then most of it was done in earth. Southern Serbia was influenced by Turks, and it has more oriental style, very similar to North Macedonia and Bulgaria. So most of the houses have stone basement, wooden structure, and different types of infills. So we have like šeper or prošće, types of wattle and daub. We also have kovanica, another type of wattle and daub, and then earth was on top of it. Then there is chatma, a mixture of earth and straw. Adobe were used, and sometimes where they had only wood or wooden houses, they would cover it with clay renders. Also, sometimes we could find half log, half earthen house. In one part they would work, in the other part they would live. And there are two types of typical houses of this region. One is Šumadija house, and it has the same materials as mentioned before, and it has a very simple plan. And then we have a bit more decorated Morava house. It's along Morava River, and it has these beautiful porches decorated with false arches. Some people think it's influence of city architecture. And they say that Le Corbusier, on his way to the Balkans, he really loved these houses. I was lucky to participate to some of the projects of restoration of these houses. One of them was in Belgrade area, and the house was protected by Heritage Preservation Institute of Belgrade, and they invited me to help with putting back the earth. And another one was a private project done in Kragujevac, or one village near Kragujevac. Also very nice experience with participants. Now we come to northern part called Vojvodina, and we have three parts in Vojvodina, Banat and Bačka, mainly plain, with some less terraces and alluvial plains. Sandstones, and we have in Srem a bit more hilly region, continental climate all over. And apart from these natural factors, we had some very important social factors. So this region was inhabited for 15,000 years, first by Illyrian, Thracian, and Celtic tribes, then colonized by Romans in the 1st century before Christ. Then Slavs arrived in the 9th century. Then we had Turkish colonization, and finally Austro-Hungarian colonization. And for us and for this presentation of today, that's the most important period. What is very specific for the region of Vojvodina is that we still have 25 ethnic groups living here and 6 official languages, and it's due to this last colonization and many people who came from all over the Europe. This is just a map with these ethnic groups living nowadays in Vojvodina. And that's why it's so multicultural, that we have different influences, different decoration. Each ethnic group has some specific elements of architecture and tradition in general. But let's maybe go before a bit and talk about these very simple habitats. First, shelters and huts. So there were some portable huts. Wattle daub was used for it, some fibers to cover the roof, and also we have evedra. It was a typical hut long time ago. It was also covered with mud. And there are some shepherd houses in Srem. They were also again done in wattle and daub. And during the winter, if the cattle stayed there, they would put some straw around. They would also cover the roofs first with straw and then with other materials. Then what is also typical for this region are troglodyte houses. We have vertical troglodyte houses called zemunice, and they could be found all over Vojvodina, and troglodyte horizontal houses called lagumica, and they could be found on these hills, also along Danube River, and so on. And something that is very unusual but existed in this region were putrika, flat roof houses with flat earthen roof. And knowing the climate, rain and snow, it's something that really belongs more to Africa than to this region, but it existed. And then, as mentioned before, Austro-Hungarian Empire came and brought a lot of changes, a lot of structure, a lot of order. First of all, once this part was part of Pannonian Sea, then it became Pannonian Basin, and it was very swampy. So with Austro-Hungarians, they brought a lot of they brought planned development of the settlements. They made a lot of canals, and so they could cultivate this fertile soil. They did some fire and flood protections, and then brought a lot of people. First house was very simple. It was one room where people were together with their cattle. Then they separated their houses into rooms. First was dirty part of the house where open kitchen or open fire was. The other one was room for sleeping. And then what we still call today typical house of Vojvodina has 3 rooms. So middle room is a kitchen with open fire, and then we have 2 rooms. First, guest room that is facing towards the street, and it was always nicely done, and it was used only for guests, for funerals and weddings. And then we have back room where most of the daily life happened, or actually it happened in front of the house, in the porch. And that was maybe one of the most important elements of the house of Vojvodina. Then this house continued to grow. People would get richer, or they would have more kids and so on. So they would make more rooms and close some parts of the porch and so on. We also have this house that faces 2 streets, and it's called elbow or kuća na lakat. And then this house continued to grow to have more rooms if they needed more space for animals, for crops, and so on. Also for the family, if their son got married, then they would make a small summer house. Old couple would go there, and then they would leave the house for their son. As I mentioned here, in Vojvodina, we had a lot of earth, so it was used wherever it could be possible. For the walls, floors, ceilings, ovens, and so on. Wood was very rare. They would bring it from Tisa river, and they would use it only where it was necessary for ceiling, roof construction, doors, and windows. Reed we used to have a lot, and then they would use it for roofs and for reinforcement of round earth walls. And then beside these elements or materials, there was a lot of straw, chaff, lime, cow dung, and so on. Earth was used for housing and all these annexes, but also for some technical buildings, horse mills, windmills. Some parts of them were done in earth. Then some sacral buildings. We still have in this region 2 remaining earthen churches, and for some public buildings. But mostly it was for housing. It was very diverse, a lot of different types of houses and elements. Main material in last 200 to 300 years was for sure in this region rammed earth, and they would reinforce it, as mentioned before, with reed or sometimes with tiles in the places where there were brick factories and tile factories. And so we had a lot of houses made of rammed earth, especially in rural areas, but also, for example, this on the picture below, you can see a horse mill, and not this left part of it, but the right one where the guy who was taking care of it living, it was made in rammed earth. Then we had adobes, and it's more related to city architecture. And in the rest, they say it was used mainly as an additional material for partition walls and chimneys. And there were 3 types of adobes or dimensions of adobes that were used for building houses. Often it was mixed with fired bricks, but also, as I mentioned already, we had some churches, some synagogues, also this mixture of fired and unfired bricks. And for example, for windmills, they would make outer wall made of fired bricks, and inner wall was made in adobe. And then we had Bottle and Dob in this region called Srem, where was Fruška Gora hill, so a bit more stone and wooden structure. So it was like that, and they would put earth as an infill, and because they had much more wood, they would put these beautiful gables or porches were nicely decorated in wood. I was lucky to work with the Heritage Protection Institute of Vojvodina, provincial one, on protection of this house. It's the oldest protected house in Vojvodina, House Savić, and yeah, we were repairing the walls, ceilings, and floors. Then another technique, not so used, but still it can be found, busenje or turf. And one of the churches in Zrenjanin district was, or the part of it, the altar, was made in busenje, and the rest was made in adobe. Bublje, cob, we don't use for making walls, but it was very used for making ovens and stoves, either cob or adobe. Once the house was finished, they would always put 2 layers of plasters made of earth and chaff, and it was inside and outside, on the floors and the ceilings, and earth was always covered with lime. And then nicely decorated with these smaller patterns, and it was females' activity to keep the house, to maintain the house, and to make these nice designs each time they would repaint it. Around the earth floors we find all over, and they were basically done in 2 layers, one a bigger one, then a smaller one, and then it was maintained by using cow dung and urine. Then we have ceilings, different types of ceilings. Sometimes they would use reed, sometimes they would make a vikla, it's a wooden stick, and they would mix earth and straw and make kind of a roll and fix it to the structure. Or in richer houses they would do it only with wood and sometimes cover it with earth from the top. Houses were first covered with straw, but because it was also needed for animals, the most common material was reed. So we used to have a lot of thatched roofs, sometimes shingle, shindra, but for very special buildings. And then in the period of Austro-Hungarian Empire, it was black roof tile, we call it bibercrep, and after that red roof tiles. What is also a very typical element mentioned before is porch, trem, gong, konak, ganjak, and so on. So the idea was to protect and increase the space. First it was only in front of the kitchen, but later on it was along the entire house on the longitudinal side, and it was done in wood or bricks and used for all the agricultural and other purposes. Sometimes the owner would sleep during the hot summers, they would sleep there in the porch and so on. They cannot say where this porch is coming from. Some researchers say it comes from Kosovo, the others say it's taken from public buildings, and some think that it's something typical for Pannonian Plain. People paid very much attention to main facade, main elevation, because they wanted to show their wealth, and that was very important part for them, and it was also very interesting because each ethnic group had their own colors. So for example, this yellow and brown were color of Serbian house, blue was color of Slovak house. Sometimes they would combine it with tiles, and this style was typical not only for Slovaks but also for Hungarians, and so on. The most interesting part of this main elevation was gable. It was first done in woodland daub, in wood if there was if they had wood, and then one typical and special type of these wooden gables are sun gables, sunčevi zabati, or very nicely decorated in classical secession of or Baroque style. There would always be written name of the owner and the year when it was built, and they try to keep it as beautiful as possible. When I came back to Serbia after my specialization, I got a lot of information from a Provincial Heritage Institute. Then I went to visit all these buildings, all these places, and unfortunately I realized that we didn't pay enough attention to our rural heritage, to art and heritage. It's mainly in remote places. People were not proud of it. They were like, for them it was symbol of poverty, and that's why they didn't like it. So and since I came back, my idea was to try to promote and to show all the benefits of keeping this beautiful heritage and also improving it and adapting it to the modern way of life. So by giving lectures and talks wherever it was possible, by organizing different workshops in Serbia and around. And then in 2010, we founded a small association in one of the villages of Vojvodina, where we do a lot of workshops. The first idea was to try to protect all these crafts and to work with old masons because they were really old, to try to remember and to copy all these old receipts. Also to learn how to make touch roofs, to try to protect as much elements as possible of traditional architecture, not only to replace it, but also to bring some improvements, some changes. We did a lot of trainings for general public, for kids, for women, and a few years ago we also introduced EQUE training in informal education through Earth Building Europe group. We do a lot of events. We have our local Lala festival, but also Regio Earth Festival between Serbia, Hungary, and Romania, and we change every year. We have a common heritage, and our idea was to show it and to show how it can be preserved and used nowadays. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any further questions, feel free to contact me. Thank you.